All right, good evening. The time being 7 PM on March 25th, 2024. All members of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. Let anyone in the audience know who happens to be here for either agenda items J or K, which is 1438 Main Street and 20 Glenwood Road. Those two hearings are going to be continued to our next meeting. So if you're here for that, you are free to leave because you will not miss anything. All right, with that, we'll bring it back. We have agenda item A, approval of minutes, which is none. Moving on to agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Do any of the members have any committee reports they wish to make at this time?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
All set.
All right, moving on to administrative actions, B2, town planners report. Ms. Lauder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few quick items here on the horizon for our scheduled April 8th meeting. We have a family suite special permit for 56 Kent Street, a modification to a previously issued signed special permit for 1830 Main Street, and an amendment to a definitive subdivision for Merrimack Drive. So those three hearings will be opened on our Monday, April 8th meeting. Next item of note, I want to remind folks that I will be holding office hours at the Senior Center tomorrow and at the library on Thursday. And the goal of those office hours is to discuss zoning matters and planning board projects in an informal setting. So if folks have any questions, they're encouraged to visit the town website. All of the dates and times are there, but it has been the last Tuesday and Thursday of the month, 10:30 to 12:30 on Tuesday and 11 to 1 on Thursday. Next item, a reminder for residents in the audience and at this table that the local election will be held on Saturday, April 6th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I recommend people check the town website to confirm their precinct and voting status. If you are in fact not registered, I believe the registration deadline for that is this Wednesday. And typically it's because folks forgot to return their annual census. So be sure to return your annual town census to make sure that your registration is active. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to the town clerk's office. And last item of note here, the Wilmington Tewksbury Chamber of Commerce is holding an event on Wednesday evening, March 27th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn in Tewksbury. And they're calling their 2024 Bloomin' Business Expo and Puppy Adoption event. So even if you're not interested in the businesses, there will be puppies. This is a free event to the public with light refreshments and free raffle table entries. The event is sponsored by the Wilmington Tewksbury Chamber, its affiliated businesses, and Gal's Best Pal Dog Rescue. For more information and to register for the event, you can see the flyer on the town website or visit bloominbusinessexpo2024.eventbrite.com. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item C, 215 Marshall Street, family suite special permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Do we have anybody here for 215 Marshall Street? You want to come on up? Just state your name for the record, and the floor is yours.
Jason Larock. I'm the one I'm doing the permit for it, so you need me to explain what I'm using?
If you wouldn't mind.
Just converting, it's a current indoor pool, that we're converting that room space to be a family suite that's going to be served our in-law purposes, and that's the plan, to make it use. But not doing it, not adding anything on. It's just the actual room that we're going to be putting interior walls, putting 2 bedrooms, small little kitchen area, and using the existing bathroom.
All right. We'll start with Mr. Lazardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, just to confirm, what's the overall square footage?
It's around 600 square feet.
Okay. And there's no exterior modifications that you're making on this?
No, just there's a couple sliders that I'm going to swap out and put windows in.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, other than that, I have no further questions.
Mr. Champa?
That kind of just answered my question. Usually the second means of egress for family suites, but I figure with all the windows there, the building department would probably just ask you to convert one over to a slider, so should be good.
Yeah, there's 6 sliders there, but I'm keeping 2 of them, and then gonna have a neutral, shared mudroom space for the main house and the family suite.
Other than that, it looks good, and we're happy to see, our families helping out their families.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I came up with roughly 800, a little under 800-ish. But it's still well within the 1,000-foot. I noticed some of the dimensions were measured from inside walls and that type of thing. So, and I took a drive-by, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty good project. And, just good luck. And
Thank you.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fratelli?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
The chair is all set as well. Open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this one? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the family suite special permit, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the family suite special permit.
All right, I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item D, 24 Wayside Road, family suite special permit. We have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Do we have anybody here for 24 Wayside Road? Mark? Once you get settled, if you give your names for the record, the floor is yours.
Patty Martell.
Mark Martell.
Floor is yours.
Well, we're here to get a special permit for our home. There is, it's hard to explain, really, right? We're trying to make a family suite. The house, the original house, we had a garage next door, and now we're trying to make that a dwelling area, or a family suite area for my son to live in.
Okay. All right, we'll go in the same order. Mr. Lazardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to follow the diagram here a little bit, but it's going to be very similar questions. What's the overall square footage of the
I'm
suite?
sorry, I don't have that.
Is it less than 1,000 square feet?
Don't know.
I think it is.
Yes, I think it is.
Under 1,000?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
And are there any external changes you're making to the building as a part of this?
No.
And that's all the questions I have.
Mr. Champa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to get a sense of these plans, because some of the writing is upside down and whatnot, so it's an L-shaped plan. Which part is the garage on your drawing? The part that's on the left or the part that's going across
Facing the home to the right.
to the right? Okay, so if I'm looking at the home, let's see here. Honestly, I'm not even really sure. So I see one wall has two doors that look like they're front doors. Is that the front of the home?
Yes,
So the family suite is to the right, which
Right.
is the section that's going back?
yes.
That's where the garage is? Okay, and you're building in the garage and the level above?
Well, it's already established, like in 82, it was a garage. In 85, it became a dwelling unit.
Okay,
But we went to the zoning board of appeals, and apparently they didn't have the authority to approve us. So it came to our attention that it was described as a single home, which brought us here today.
okay, so you're basically looking to upgrade a dwelling unit,
We're just trying to make it legal, just,
okay? All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duffy.
So I had the same difficulty trying to get a grasp on what the plans were looking like there. So, the top page where I'm looking at, I guess I see 2 pages there. Neither page says which one is going to be the new dwelling unit. The one that says, it's got an 11-foot 2 by 12-foot bedroom up in the left-hand corner, and then it shows some stairs. Another room that shows 18, it shows on the kitchen and a TV room. But anyways, just generally, I know it's an existing building, but the square footage that I come up with roughly on that outline is probably, more like 1,500, if I'm reading that right.
Been down now.
Maybe, I don't know, it's a little hard to tell. It's probably, I see you have a little chunk taken out of it there. I guess it's just up to the building inspector, the building department to determine if it meets the criteria for the square footage, because I certainly can't get a square footage from the drawings. So I guess I'll just leave it in their capable hands.
Mr. Vitale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a couple of questions. You have sewer at the house?
Yes.
Good, okay, that was one of the requirements. Once we do approve this, which I'm sure we might soon, the building inspector will come out, and he'll be the hands-on at the site. So any questions and concerns and diagrams and walls and all that stuff will be figured out by him and yourself.
Yeah.
Once he gets there, as far as, what you're gonna be doing and what you wanna do. Because these plans, Mr. Martell, are probably the worst plans I've seen
We
ever.
actually met with,
So-
we met
We
with the
met-
building
We
inspector
met with
already.
Leo.
He came to the
Leo
home.
came by already.
Oh, he did, okay.
Yes.
And,
And I actually showed him the plans and asked him if they were acceptable.
really?
Yes.
Well, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and they're pretty rough, but I mean, I can follow it to a degree. I was by the house 24, 22. I know exactly where it is, but it's very difficult to follow, but I think I got a grasp on it, so. And again, the building inspector is going to be the guy who's going to come out and do all that stuff with you. And so now who's staying at the house? Your son?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, great. So I'm all for that. It's a great idea, and I wish you well. So with that, I'm all set.
Yeah, the chair's all set too. Just to clarify, that, my understanding as well is that they have been in discussions with the building inspector. He's completely aware of what's going on and what they're trying to square away at the residence. So, at some point, the contractor's gonna have to come in with the real plans, and building inspector can deal with them at that point. So, with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this one? Seeing none. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to close the public hearing?
Motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the family suite special permit.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, we approve the family suite at 24 Wayside Road as submitted.
All right, we have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. That brings us to agenda item E, 300 Chandler Street, Town of Tewksbury sign special permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved.
A motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Do we have anyone here from the town for this?
Hello, I'm Vincent Bommel. I'm the facilities manager for the town.
All right. Floor is yours.
Excuse me?
Floor is yours.
So I'm here to apply for a special permit for 2 electronic message boards, one for the senior center.
We gotta do them separate, though. We know that, but you can only do the one we're doing right now first.
Okay,
So this is the Chandler Street, so this is the one for the library.
okay, so I'm here to apply for a permit for the special permit for the library for electronic message board. It's 4 feet by 8 feet, and it's the exact size as the existing one that exists there now.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I realize a couple of things, that the remove and replace, the R&R, is probably the most sensible approach and probably the best value for the town, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that, and I'm good with that. And I also understand that the town is generally exempt from the signed bylaw. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that the remove and replace option, LED, as long as it meets the rest of the criteria as far as hours of operation and that type of thing, then I'm perfectly okay with that. Thank you.
Mr. Fattalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's going back in the same place it is right now, correct?
Same place.
Yeah, take it right out, put a new one in. So, as far as the clarity on the sign, are we at the top of the level of clarity for that sign, do you know, or?
We are. It's identically the same one that exists right now on the common,
Okay,
so it's exact same as that.
okay.
So I had thinking that it would be the exact same thing, same software, same everything. and they would all be the same.
Because I wasn't really happy with the sign on Pleasant Street that we put in for the school. And for some reason, it's not
It
that
seems to be.
great readable wise. I
Seems
think, I
to
don't
be
know,
a
maybe it
little
was
too
just me, but
small.
I
Correct.
got my eyes done, so I think I'll be able to see
Yeah.
better, so, but it's still not that clear to me, I don't know. It's just, but I'm glad to hear that we're gonna have the same type of sign that's at the town center, which is great.
Yep.
So, with that, I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Champa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I see some comparable mock-ups here that Ms. Louder forwarded us today as far as the size that the sign would be if we weren't doing a full replacement. And I think clearly, you know, the full replacement makes sense. And you've already answered one of my questions, which is, how does this size compare to what's at the town center? And I think we haven't really received any complaints about the sign at town center being too big, too bright, or anything else, so seems like a no-brainer to me. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lazardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, we've talked about the hours of operation a little bit. Do you have hours that this will be on?
How it works?
Just the hours that you'll have the sign on.
We can put it on whenever, I mean, it can go on in the morning, it can shut down at midnight, you could put it on all day like this one runs. Everything gets programmed by a computer, so they'd probably run this one from the library, but they could all be run from the same computer throughout town. So if there was ever an emergency or anything like that, they could all go onto a 911 and have an emergency right on all three boards together.
And are they similar messages kind of all across town, or does the library have a different one from the senior center?
Library has different ones than the senior center. They have their daily activities and their weekly activities on that.
Okay, no further questions.
Just, do we know if they're asking for it to run the same as the one in the town center? Because we might as well get that out of the way now.
No, it's not going to run like the one in the town center. It's going to have completely different information.
No, I don't
on it.
mean the same information, I mean the hours, because you mentioned that this one runs all the time. Was the intent for the one at the library to do the same? Or to run under the, you know, the hours that we have on here, which is, what is this, from 12 AM to 6 AM, they're off. That's what most other businesses are required to meet unless they're open. Obviously, the library is not open from 12 to 6, nor is town hall for that matter, but we have the sign run 24/7. So I'm just trying to figure out, if we need to make it 24/7, we need to know that now, is what I'm saying. I mean, go ahead, come back and fix it, but if you know that now, we can just take care of it.
I don't know what the library really intends to do at this point with it.
All right, so then, I'm going to default to the 12 to 6 AM, and if it turns out that that's inaccurate, someone's going to have to come back and ask for a change.
Okay?
Because I don't want to make it 24 hours if that's not what anybody's asking, so,
No,
All right.
I have no problem with that.
okay. Otherwise, I'm all set. So I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, can I make one further comment, please? Thank you. I would just like to consider, there's been a lot of kind of recent talk. It's been a problem for me for a couple of years, but about the brightness of LED lighting. And I think that issue has sort of gained some traction out there in the public world. And I would just wonder if any of these LED signs that the town approves here became a problem in some way going forward, is there a recourse? Is there a recourse for us?
So there is a provision in the bylaw, they are to maintain it at a reasonable intensity. And if the intensity appears to be too much, then it's within the bylaw to revisit it.
So is the intensity adjustable on these signs?
It does, it brightens up, or it's just like a cell phone. So you can brighten the font on it, or you can
Okay.
bring it down.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What is I guess the only thing I would add, so before we go closing it, is that with the other signs, the same thing, that we make them, you know, they have to be kept in good working order in perpetuity. The sign themselves is kept in good condition in perpetuity. You know, like Mr. Fratelli about, you know, the clarity and those kind of things are kept, you know, at a high grade, so they don't become those, you know. I honestly think, Mr. Fratelli, I feel like when we did the one at the high school, we worked under the older rules, and we tried to make it amber only or something.
Yeah.
And that is really probably what screwed it up. We should have let them use the better, newer, but there were those who didn't like them at all. So it was kind of a middle ground, I think, so. But not the case here with this one or these, so that'll help. All right, so with that, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, we close the public hearing.
I have a motion made, do I have a second? Motion made second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the signed special permit.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the signed special permit at 300 Chandler Street.
All right, with the
Second.
inclusion of what we had tonight, okay? So we got a motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item F, 175 Chandler Street, Town of Tewksbury signed special permit. We have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Okay,
All right, so now we're looking at the sign at the senior center.
Correct.
Identically the same. It'll be 96 inches by 48 inches. Same identical, completely the same sign. So the writing on it will be a little different. It'll be the Tewksbury Senior Center. It'll be on it, or something like that will be on it.
all right, in the same order. Mr. Duffy?
I have the exact same questions. I'm sure it'll be the same answers, so I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Fratalia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's going to be a full-color sign. I don't know if we mentioned that before, but it's going to be a full-color sign.
Full color.
Which is not in our regular bylaws, but, so we don't need to, oh, it is, right? Yeah.
So municipal signs are exempt from the requirements of the sign provisions in section 6.2, but in the interest of it being an electronic message sign, I wanted the town to go through the same processes that everybody else does. Both signs have been requested with full color, but my understanding after discussions with Mr. Bommel and other town staff is that they intend for these message boards to function the exact same way that the manual boards do now, which it's really going to be background and text listing programs and activities. So while there likely will be color, it's unlikely that they're going to have full images the same way that the town center sign does.
Correct.
Put that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Champa?
Same questions before, same answers, so I'm all good, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lazardi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the same question about the hours of operation. I'm assuming this one will be the same as well.
Everything's going to be identically the same.
No further questions.
All right, so the chair says the same thing the chair said before about the last sign. So with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on this one? Seeing none. Bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to close the public hearing.
Motion made, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, that's it.
Make a motion to approve the special permit at 175 Chandler Street.
All right, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item G, zoning bylaw amendment discussion, MBTA communities.
Do you want to waive the reading of the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry, do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. I'm sorry. Ms. Louder?
All right, one moment. I think Brian is rebooting. All right, well, while our telemedia
He's
director.
pointing to you.
Oh. What was he pointing at me to do? All right, so he is going to reboot that. What I'm asking him to project is the handout that I gave to the board, just so folks can know what we're looking at. And just for the benefit of people in the audience who don't know, my name is Alexandra Louder, I'm the town planner, and I am going to be presenting on the zoning bylaw amendment related to the MBTA communities. And what I wanted to do this evening is, we've talked a lot about what this law is, the requirements for Tewksbury and our outreach plan to date, if anybody's been following this. So tonight I want to take a little bit of a different approach and talk about why this law was enacted in the first place and what it's been a response to. So this law, better known as MBTA Communities, was enacted on January 14th, 2021 by Governor Charlie Baker as part of an economic development bill package with provisions for providing a boost for the economy, including this law. The bill itself was a response to the state's struggle to attract and retain employers and to attempt or slow or stop the mass exodus from Massachusetts, particularly among 25 to 34-year-olds. Those two struggles speak to a major reason why MBTA Communities was a part of an economic development bill. There's not enough housing stock for employers to feel they can comfortably expand here and expect their employees to live a reasonable distance from work. And for college grads who are entering the full-time labor market and are looking to put down roots, they're coming up empty. This board in particular knows how dire of straits young families are in 2024 so far. You guys have approved 4 family suites, including the 2 tonight. It's one of the only ways young families don't have to leave the community they grew up in and for grandparents to see their grandchildren. This economic development bill sought to increase the housing stock for retirees as well. By encouraging a building of a variety of housing types, older adults are given more options to downsize and free up some of those desperately needed family homes. This law sets a higher density, but it doesn't make it limitless. It sets multifamily housing to be built under site plan review, but it does not mean there are no boundaries. It does not overrule wetland protection, floodplain, or require a community to foot the bill for infrastructure and expansion. Most specifically, it is not a mandate to build, nor does it force the community to accept development unfettered. What it does do is place the zoning over a part of town, should a private property owner want to utilize it, just like anything under the underlying district. But they're not required to do so. They can continue to operate their business for as long as they like, and only if they choose to build multifamily themselves will the zoning be exercised. This bylaw amendment puts the town at an advantageous position where it brings us into compliance with the law, and it locates the potential for some multifamily housing to possibly be built while it's near grocery stores, restaurants, a gym, a dry cleaner, and the post office, creating the best likelihood for a walkable community. And I'm hoping this will go up soon. And I want to emphasize that I'm happy to answer questions related to what the outreach has been so far this year. Hopefully it'll be up on the screen soon as well. And just to express that, you know, a lot of communities, 177 communities are subject to this law. And so far, I think we are in a good position to be in compliance with the law while also maintaining Tewksbury's identity and trying to locate the dense housing that we may build closer to amenities that folks would like to have. And with that, I'll take board's questions. And, you know, when we get to the public hearing, any questions from the audience? Thank you.
All right, we'll start Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Louder, I want to commend you on all the work you've done on this. You know, I wasn't in favor of this initially because I didn't like the idea of it being stuck down our throats. You know, and now look what happens to Milton and so forth. And it's like we're going to be stuck with it regardless of whether we like it or not. Not that I do like it. So we are not really an MBTA community. We're an adjacent community, correct?
Correct.
Right. So the number that I heard that we needed was 1,214 housing units. Is that correct?
So there we go. So as part of the law, the state had put together a compliance model where it determined whether the district that a community submitted was compliant, and another component of that, was that each community, based on whether it had the MBTA services, was adjacent or considered rural, as a part of their density calculation, would be given a, quote, target unit count. So as an adjacent community, our target unit count is 10% of our overall housing stock, which happens to be the same number that's required under 40B, which did create some confusion for folks, but it's just the metric that they're using for adjacent communities. So as a part of our density calculation, not only is it a minimum of 15 units per acre, but also factoring in a target unit production of 1,214 units. And that's just a part of the density calculation. It isn't the number that we have to build. It's just a number that they use to factor into our density calculator.
So just for the record, the zone that we're looking at is from the post office, correct?
It's next to the post office because we are not allowed to include federal, state, or municipally owned land. So it does start at 1777 Main Street and 1768 Main Street across the street. So for easier terms, that's Heathbrook Plaza and Al Fresco Restaurant, all the way to the Shawshene Street intersection, staying on the Market Basket side of things. So 1768 to 1900 on the even side, 1777 to 1973 on the opposite side.
That goes right to Shawshene Street,
Correct.
correct? Right, okay.
Yep.
So it just seems to me that the majority of that location is all businesses.
Correct.
So do we plan on, I mean, we have to identify that particular A zone, right? So that was one of the reasons why I didn't vote for that particular zone, was because the fact that it takes away all of the business area of us. I mean, some of it's vacant down there at the plaza down there, but, I mean,
So-
can we put in that many units down there?
Only if everything there were to be leveled and started from zero. But the intention with the zoning is not to do that, and we don't have the authority to do that anyway, because it's all made up of individual private property owners. The idea with placing it here is that should a property owner want to redevelop, the zoning is there as an option, but they still maintain all of their current allowed uses in the underlying mixed-use business district, which is why everything that's there right now can continue to lawfully exist, and it's not compromised in any way. That zoning only comes into place if a property owner decides, you know what, this business isn't doing well anymore, I'm ready to move on, or I'm ready to redevelop, and this is just an additional option for redevelopment if they choose to do it.
Okay. Just a couple other comments, and I'll let my colleagues speak, but it just seems to me that the housing that we're going to be developing, or someone's going to be developing, will be mostly rental units. Does that agree? No?
Not necessarily, nope. This says, actually, that's a really interesting question. So I think a lot of folks are assuming that it's going to be multifamily rental. There's no provision that requires it to be rental. It can be ownership units, individual condominiumized units, or it can be as a part of a larger rental project, but there's no requirement for it to be one way or the other. And it also doesn't require it to be one large building. The idea of a variety of building options is that it can be a series of smaller buildings or what have you. So there isn't a requirement for it to look any certain way.
Okay. So along those same guidelines and discussions, the avenue for most people in the town of Tewksbury is very hard to get a home these days because of the cost. I mean, we all know it. I mean, the prices go anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, anywhere up from there, and I don't know how people do it today. I mean, I know I couldn't afford it today. Thank God my children are all living within a couple of miles of me in Tewksbury, and they have a home. But the people today, I mean, I just feel horrible for them that they can't afford some of them. But, with that said, I mean, if this produces some single-family homes, in the region or in the zone down there, then that'll be great. Or some cooperative homes or something like that, where you have a piece of ownership, and maybe not a whole single-family home or something, but it's just a tough thing to swallow. I'm trying to wrap my head around it and be in favor of it, but I'm leaning that way, but I still see the problems with this overbuilding of units and having issues with the town, with the schools, with the traffic and so forth. The traffic has already been complained about by a lot of people in town as it is, and this isn't going to, diminish it, that's for damn sure, but, I'm looking positively, but we'll see what happens. But with that, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lazardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I saw we had some feedback from EOHLC that we had incorporated in here, do we believe this plan as of now is compliant?
Yes, so the initial review, just for the benefit of folks in the audience, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly known as the Department of Housing and Community Development, a lot of alphabet soup, basically the state agency that overlooks housing and development in the state. They offered a pre-adoption review because of how complicated this zoning really is. They were offering those reviews to be able to go through once and make sure that not only the district itself meets dimensional requirements, which thankfully we didn't have any comments on that, but to also make sure that there were no conflicts within the language itself. And as Mr. Lizotte noted, there were 3 comments that came in from the state, all very addressable. I ran them through town council, and, you know, he was okay with how we changed the language to make sure that we're not creating conflicts with state law or within the bylaw itself. So those have all been incorporated into the warrant article.
Thanks. Yeah, so again, similar comments, not necessarily a fan of the state law overall, but I also believe it's in the town's best interest to put forward a compliant plan. You know, I think this allows us to be an active participant in this still and, you know, really actually have some say in how we shape the town. I also don't think it's the best use of the town's, you know, finite resources to wind up in a fight with the state, who was also using your tax dollars to then sue the town. As far as location, you know, obviously we do not have a rail station to center this around. We had a couple of selections of units or of areas that we could have placed this. This unit that we selected was ultimately the one that came the closest to a walkable community. Does have a significant amount of amenities around it, but it is, you know, definitely there's no real mass transit, either rail or light rail stations that you can get to, you know, from the immediate area there. I do have concerns about what that means for, you know, traffic on 38, infrastructure down there. And I think by remaining active participants in this process, we can, you know, help to shape that as we go forward. That's all my comments.
Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alex, I also want to commend you on the work that you've done there. I find everything like very detailed, informative, and definitely, I believe, in the best interest of the town. And all that being said, I just had a couple of, maybe a question for you. You know, one of the common themes that, you know, obviously, you know, any development brings up traffic concerns. If I'm not mistaken, like the overall intent, you know, and obviously it could take decades for it to play out, is to reduce traffic by increasing access to public transportation. Would that be fairly accurate?
The overall intention is, yes, to locate these districts, if not close to actual mass transit, as Mr. Lizotte noted, then close to regional transit, which we have in the LRTA, the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, where the bus runs along Route 38. And in the event of not utilizing those transit options, then being able to do as much walking in the district as possible, thereby reducing the local traffic.
Right. And also to create housing for a workforce.
Correct.
You know, just to make, you know, if everybody's moving out of town and we want businesses to come into town, they need workers. They need people to, you know, to have a reasonable commute to work. So I think I mean, the intent, I don't agree with everything, but I think the intent overall is to kind of address both of those issues. So, you know, that being said, I know one of the common themes is that people bring up generally is that it puts a strain on the school system. Mm-hmm. Is there something you want to? There's maybe some numbers that we might have on that could address that.
Sure. So I did take the liberty of pulling new developments since 2012, and that includes multifamily rental developments, multifamily ownership units, condominiumized developments, and single-family detached, and found that the most new students in the public school system are in fact generated by the single-family home developments by quite a significant margin. The latest being Terramore Drive, 325 Marshall Street, which generated approximately 74 new students across a 39-unit subdivision, which results in average rate of about 0.77 students per unit, and the multifamily developments at most generate about a quarter students per unit on average.
Okay, so that's a, fairly, accurate representation of, because it certainly addresses one of the concerns that people have, that these types of construction, when and if it ever happens, all we're talking about is providing the zoning to build that if it ever comes to pass.
Right, and we've actually had declining enrollments over the last decade, so
Yeah.
it hasn't come to pass just yet, but certainly our schools are not overcrowded based on new construction alone.
And one more thing, so we're already at 10% on affordable housing requirement in town here in Tewksbury, so that kind of helps the town in the sense that we can't have a forced 40B project come into town.
Correct. That's a separate but related issue. The town has exceeded its minimum required 10% on the subsidized housing inventory, which means that we'd have a collection of developments that meet the 40B criteria, which is that 25% of the overall units within a development meet that affordable threshold. And under this proposed zoning, the state actually caps the affordable provisions at 10% of the total project, when our underlying zoning actually has a provision for 15%, but the state has, in an effort to go for more housing than not and make it less cost burdensome, they are capping communities at 10% unless they complete an economic feasibility analysis that shows that the economy would support it. I know that Tingsboro was able to get one passed at 12.5%, but I also know that Wilmington was unable to justify exceeding the 10%. And it's also something that we can do at a later date. If this bylaw passes and we pass with the 10%, then we can certainly undertake an economic feasibility study to see if we can raise it beyond that 10%. But for now, we're just going with the 10.
Well, I asked that question in the context of, that certainly gives the town a little bit more leverage as far as mitigating any kind of development
Right.
in that area. So that's why I think that's good for the people to know. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Champa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So generally, I'm not a huge fan of the state litigating social change or tackling problems where more often than not, if they just got out of the way, reasonable people could solve the problem themselves. But that was a conversation to have probably 20, 30 years ago. The housing situation we're in now is truly a crisis. When our young kids growing up can't be teachers and police officers and firefighters in town, and also afford to buy even a small family home in town, that I think shows that there is a serious issue, because that's something that when I moved to Tewksbury, I saw, generations of people who went back, 40, 50, 60 years, and have always lived here. Their kids all live here, and we've definitely gotten away from that, and that's a big part of what's been Tewksbury's identity for a long time. So while I don't really trust the state to legislate itself out of a wet paper bag, they're doing what they can, and it's not a perfect solution. The alternative, to me, it's not something you can do. I mean, it's not even David versus Goliath. I mean, because that would be the equivalent of you giving Goliath all the weapons they're going to beat you with. So it's something we need to do. We're definitely, and by the way, I would also like to commend Ms. Louder on all the outreach and meetings and input and vision boards and everything else. This is not a decision, we did not get to this point on a whim. This has had a lot of input from the community. And similar to what I've seen with other projects, the closer we got to site selection, the more concerns people had about it. Because now all of a sudden it's becoming real, and I do understand that and sympathize with that. Couple of notes is the developer that does this. I mean, when they bought this particular district, and obviously there's other owners, as Ms. Louder mentioned, that own other plazas and parcels and whatnot. So without a doubt, this is not going to turn into some massive housing area overnight. I mean, a lot of these lots, more than likely, won't be built for a very, very long time. So this isn't going to be an immediate thing. And I think we have the ability, where this is being brought in, that we can ask for things like, and we can't necessarily mandate them, but we can ask for things like, this is an MBTA community zone. Could you look into adding to your HOA a shuttle that can get to the different T stations? You know, can we look at things that possibly will increase pedestrian safety so they can walk to the areas of Main Street and create more of a village? Similar to what you might see in like downtown Wakefield, where people will walk the lake, go to the farmer's market, then go downtown. So if done right, there will be benefits to this, and I think it will strengthen our community. And I think that we have the ability to create a really nice neighborhood in this area. The traffic is going to be a problem, but unless you're willing to say nobody else ever gets to move to Tewksbury ever, traffic's going to get bigger. It's going to get worse. You know, we're always looking to grow the town, and traffic is the unfortunate byproduct of it. I don't enjoy it. I can honestly say, you know, I hate seeing the traffic, but, you know, we're growing up and we live in a very old state where these streets were just never designed for the population that we have. You know, I'm not sure what kind of solutions there will be for that, but, so while I don't like having, you know, all the weight of the state coming down, I don't think it would be right to jeopardize our schools and road projects and funding and any of that in order to fight this, because who knows how long something like this could take, 2, 3, 5 years? And then if we lose, does it get appealed to the state Supreme Court? And then if it fails there, I mean, how far do you go? You know, are you willing to go 10, 20 years without state funding so you can win this? So that's basically a lot of just what I've seen from different, seen and heard from a lot of people, and some of my own thoughts there. And after a lot of thinking and wrangling, ultimately, I think this is the way to go. We have to comply. My decision is we have to comply with MBTA communities, and I think with Alex's help and direction, that we've done a really good job of giving the town all of the options available and coming to the best solution out of all of the available options. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so, you know, some of the folks already said it, but obviously, Alex, the effort put into this is certainly impressive, especially considering, unlike a lot of the other things we have to comply with, this had the unique situation of having to be reviewed by 2 different entities. So you've got housing, I'm not going to do the alphabet soup again, and the AG's office. They're both approving what you send in separately. It's not like they're looking at the same thing. So, you know, when you're looking at the bylaw, and the reason I'm saying this is because, you know, I, for one, am an advocate of not touching this. I know people like to get creative at town meeting. That is unwise and is not a good idea, because you might change something that looks okay in one area, but will run afoul of the other entity that has to approve these, in which case you are now no longer compliant. The amount of time and effort that's gone into this is really not something that is in the best interest of the town to be tinkered with at town meeting. You know, you're free to vote up, down, that's, you know, everybody's right. But, you know, the likelihood that someone knows everything and all the consequences of the amendments they may try to advocate for would be surprising, considering the effort that was necessary to get this through. And even after all of that effort, it still came back with a couple of little tweaks from both entities saying, do this, tweak that. And that's after 90 days of them looking at it. So I know that, you know, sometimes, you know, you think you're making things better, but I would say in this case, I doubt that that's the case. It's definitely going to be something that could put the town in jeopardy of not being compliant after all the efforts made to make it compliant. A couple of the other things, and, you know, just because I want to really hammer this home, because it's been said differently in different places. The town is not required, nor is it the one empowered to build units. The 1,200 units is the number that we had to zone to accommodate. It doesn't mean that 1,200 and change is built, will ever be built. It could be a number anywhere from 0 to that number. None of it is mandated. It's not required. We have not the authority to make any of those landowners do anything, nor do we have the mandate from anybody to hit a certain number. You're only required to accommodate the size of the zone to meet the requirements. So, and there's a couple of the other board members already meant, you're talking about potentially decades before any of that space may even open up. There are businesses currently, several successful businesses on those areas right now. You'd have to have those businesses have some reason to not exist anymore for that space to open up. Obviously, we don't want that because those are successful businesses in town. So, you know, we're being compliant, but you're not going to see the day after this thing passes, 1,200 units suddenly appear on Main Street. So I want to make sure I clarify that, because sometimes that 1,200 units is said like it's a fait accompli, and it's going to happen because you pass this. That is not true, all right? Some things that will happen if we do not pass this, as Milton is quickly finding out, there are 13 grants that the town will immediately be disqualified for, some of which we've already used and have planned to use or have used in the past. You're out. That does not even count the other grants that you will be disadvantaged against the compliant towns should you try to apply for them, which means you're just going to put yourself at the bottom of the pile for all of those as well, and that's beyond the 13. Not to mention, I'll use Mr. Champers here. I never advocate for the idea of having to pay for both ends of a lawsuit. If you don't do this, the Attorney General's office will sue the town. The town will pay to defend itself. The townspeople will also be paying the Attorney General's office to fight us, because that's where your taxes are going. So in Mr. Champ's example, you're paying for the rocks being thrown at you and the rocks you're trying to throw. Doesn't seem like a very good use of the town's money. And I would suggest, and this is my humble opinion, we are going to lose that battle should we enter into it. I'd rather let Milton fight about it. If for some reason they somehow manage to get around something and something changes, the bylaw can be changed. It can be amended. So should we find out in the future that there's something we can tweak in it, all the way to repeal it, I suppose, you can do that. But you can't do it the other way around. If we're not compliant, the hammer comes down. That is going to happen. I suspect Milton thought it wouldn't, and that it would somehow be delayed or whatever. That did not happen. It happened nearly immediately. That does not even count the private entities that can still sue them, of which they will also have to defend themselves. That just hasn't happened yet, but it can, and it could happen to us if some entity that, decides to come after the town does it here and they just didn't do it there. So that's another problem that's floating out there that people have to be aware of, if we don't comply with this. Let's see, what else do I have on here? All right. So I know the other one that I think some people may have the thought of somehow trying to postpone dealing with this. I know just from what I've seen, Milton, while they didn't like it, this is going to go directly to, their street is going to go directly to the SJC for Mass, which is the end of the process instead of multiple steps. They're going to make a decision, but it's not even going to be heard until October, which means our October town meeting is not really an option of trying to let this wait it out and see what happens. Because even if it's not delayed and heard in October, the SJC is not going to issue a decision in October that anybody can use. So you're going to put yourself right up against the very last moment we have, and that isn't really useful, because if it turns out there was anything we needed to do, we're going to be out of compliance. This is the time to deal with this so that we have time, oddly enough, say, find something else that we need to tweak. It gives you an opportunity to do that. You do this, try to do this thing later on, you're really putting the town under the gun.
I also just wanted to add a point of clarification that when the chairman refers to the SJC, that is the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, and that is the highest court in the state. The Attorney General requested that the case be heard immediately by them instead of going through the lower circuit courts and possibly dragging this out for, as the chairman mentioned, months to years. So they're looking for a swift judgment so as to not delay the 176 other communities who are trying to figure out how to comply. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's it from us. I'll open it up to anyone in the audience.
Two more things, one thing. Is it fair to say that the AG probably would not take it right to the SJC unless they had a pretty good sense of the SJC's temperature on this particular matter?
Well, I wouldn't want to presume that the Attorney General and the SJC are discussing it, but I would say that they feel pretty confident, especially keeping in mind, nobody likes 40B. 40Bs have been around for decades at this point. It's the same theory, because if they were right in what they're claiming, which is that the state can't do what Milton is saying they're doing, then 40B would have likely been challenged a long time ago and wouldn't exist anymore. It does. That's why we have to worry about it when we do stuff all the time, and why it matters to get to the 10%. It's the same idea, because 40B, as referred to as the anti-snob zoning law, was foisted upon towns because they were trying to prevent development. It was the answer to what the towns were doing. This would appear to be the new answer to towns' efforts to, not allow housing to be built. The likelihood that suddenly, after decades of 40B existing and no one liking it, that suddenly, they're going to destroy that entire process seems surprising. So I don't think the Attorney General is concerned at all, but that's just my guess.
And then I just wanted to piggyback on one point that you had, which is when we passed the cannabis law, we were immediately inundated with, 8, 10 applications for cannabis shops. Development takes years just to get things off the ground. Just a quick side note, I was on the elementary school building committee. They don't tell you when you volunteer, it's an 8-year sentence. So I'm thinking normal construction, because normally when I bid a set of plans, all of that already happened, and the site's already been selected, and there's designers and drawings, and you bid, and then a few months later, construction starts. Development takes, it takes years sometimes just to get through the site work and figuring out where everything's gonna go and dealing with your wetlands and everything else. So the change, whatever changes come, will be gradual. And then hopefully that'll give us time to work with whoever the developers are and shape this in a way that, we can maximize benefits and minimize the negative side of, which primarily just seems to be traffic is what everybody's concerned about. Other than traffic, nobody really seems to have a huge problem with this. So, and that's an area that's under our purview, and based on, my years of service with my fellow planning board members, I can assure you, we will be diligent when it comes to traffic, parking, pedestrian safety, all of that. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the extra time.
All right. So with that, I'll open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on the, if you want to come on up. Once you get to the podium, if you give your name and your address, the floor is yours.
Sorry.
Actually, podium.
Over there, okay.
Never mind.
My name is Rick Farron. I live at 1830 Main Street, Tewksbury. And of course, that's the area that is being in question. But the question I would have for the committee here would be, are all towns being treated equally? In other words, if you take a more affluent town, like say Andover, or Weston, or Lincoln, how is this multiple dwelling applied to them?
So Ms. Lauder can answer it, but right off the bat, I'm guessing Andover actually has the commuter rail, so their requirements would be more onerous than ours, for example, because we're a adjacent commuter, as Wilmington as well, but Ms. Lauder would have more detail than me.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, then that's correct. So basically, the 177 communities that are defined as an MBTA community are either those communities that have the rail services themselves, or they are adjacent, meaning they are just the town next door. So surrounding us, what makes us an adjacent community is because Lowell, Billerica, Andover, and Wilmington all have rail services. And as the chairman noted, while each of those communities is required to come up with a district, the burden is slightly different for those communities that do have the rail services versus the ones that are adjacent like us. So I had noted previously that as a part of the density calculation, adjacent communities are required to factor in 10% of their year-round units. So 1,214 units goes into our density calculator, but the communities that do have the rail services, like Billerica, like Lowell, like Andover and Wilmington, they have to calculate, I believe it's 25% of their year-round units into their density calculator, thereby resulting in nearly double the unit capacity. Again, that unit capacity is not something that we are mandated to build. It is not one that we are expected to build, but it does factor into the calculator, meaning that those communities that have the rail services, they are expected to produce more units because they have the services. And they are also tethered, as Mr. Lizotte noted, they are tethered by their station. So they have to locate a certain number of units within a half a mile of the station. Originally in the guidelines, the adjacent communities like Tewksbury were noted that they had to locate the districts within a half a mile of the nearest T station, which I don't know where you all are looking, but I grew up right next to the North Billerica train station, and that's probably the closest, and it's still about 3 miles away. So that was understandably adjusted later on, that we are not tethered to any particular area, but we do have to produce at least, we have to factor in 10% of our year-round units into the calculation, but the communities that have the services are held to a higher burden, for sure.
All right, so just based on the people moving into the area would have proper transportation to get to the necessary workplace and what have you. So communities that do have rail service and bus service would be more applicable to having more units.
Correct. And that's MBTA bus services. Another item that was noted for clarification during the public comment section for the state guidelines was, does local transit count? And it does not count as an applicable service that would then make our threshold higher in the density calculator. The LRTA is really, for us, it's just a bonus to be able to maybe use that as a focal point for our district, which the LRTA will, if passed, run right through this district, and we can utilize it as part of our, public transit, pedestrian-friendly district, but it doesn't hold us to anything from a geographic standpoint or from a unit capacity standpoint.
Okay, my question's answered. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none. Bring it back to the board. Any further questions or comments from the board members?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So before I open this up for a motion for a recommendation on the article, the one thing I'd like to add or suggest is that in addition to what I hope would be an endorsement to pass this, it would be that we also include that we recommend that amendments are not made to this at town meeting. We've done it with the others. We did it with the bylaw for the same reason, which is the unintended consequences of those amendments are difficult to figure out on the fly at town meeting. This really should be an up or down, you're free to do what you want, but tinkering is not advisable. And I'd like our motion to include that suggestion to the body as well. So,
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
I agree as well.
all right.
Agreed.
And
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be looking for, just for procedural purposes, a recommendation to adopt for both the bylaw language itself and the associated map. So 2 articles, 1 subject.
Okay, so do we have so for the first, for the bylaw amendment itself, or the bylaw itself?
Closing the public hearing first and then.
I'm sorry, I
yeah.
thought we did that. I apologize. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion made. Do we have motion made and seconded? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the zoning bylaw first, we have a recommendation.
Make a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that we endorse the zoning bylaw warrant article as submitted.
Recommendation for adoption and with the additional Recommendation not to amend,
Yes,
correct?
right,
All right,
yes.
so we have a motion made. We have a
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. As to the map, associated map.
Make a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that we endorse the associated map with this zoning bylaw article.
All right, so we recommend adoption of the map, same caveat.
Yep.
So we have a motion made. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. Thank you again, Ms. Louder. All right, that brings us to agenda item H, 1921 Main Street, signed special permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Do we have someone here for 1921 Main Street?
Hello, my name is Sukhvinder Singh, and I'm the owner of Taste of the Himalayas.
And my name is Rick Farren, and I am the sign person making the sign for this gentleman.
Okay.
All right, floor is yours.
Okay, the reason I'm here today is it seems that my sign exceeds certain limitations on what this sign could actually look like on the building, and my statement is just when I look all around me, there's massive signs, and it's an honest mistake. I didn't look into certain specifications to signs and their size. So I purchased a sign, and it seems to be like 5 inches over the requirements by the bylaws.
That's on the height, correct?
It's on the height,
How
yes.
about the width?
The width is fine.
Okay.
That's it? All right. So we'll start with Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you messed up and you want us to help you fix it, correct?
Well, I've been in the,
Just say yes.
yes.
So listen, I am always willing to help a business. What you're asking for is minimal in my eyes, as far as just a minor oversize of the sign. Like I said, I'm always willing to help a business succeed, stay in town. How long have you been in town now?
I'm the original owner of Saffron, so about 2015.
Okay,
Yes.
good. How is business?
Business is okay. It'll be better with the sign.
Okay. Good answer.
That was good. That's much better.
So with that, I'm all set. I have no problem endorsing and approving the sign that you have and put it to good use.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Champa?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the base part of the sign is, obviously the heaviest part. The part that's going to exceed the height by 5 inches is really just the pointy little cap, which is, in my mind, inconsequential. It's why we have this ability to review these, and in this case, I have no issue with what you're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lazardi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no other comments.
Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the only kind of outstanding question for me is the length, the 8 feet. Do you guys have any documentation as to the existing facade length?
Yes, sir.
This is, originally was going to look like an animal, but that's what we tried to show would look like if we went with the town's requirements.
Okay, but how long is the existing facade on the building, is the question? 29 feet, okay. Okay. Of which you're proposing 8 feet.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the additional .56 feet, Mr. Chairman, and it seems as though the 8 feet is in compliance. As far as
That's correct. They are allowed, because they are within 100 feet of the street, they are allowed a sign that is half the length of the facade. And if they are indicating that the facade is 29 feet, is
Yes.
that right? Then the maximum allowed length would be 14.5, so that 8 feet is within the allowed width, and they are only seeking a variance from the height of the sign.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yeah, the chair's all set as well. I mean, this is not onerous for anyone. So with that, I'll open up to anyone in the audience with any questions or comments on this one. Seeing none, Bring it back to the board. Ms. Lauder, just confirm the waivers for me, please, if you would.
All right, let's see here. There are no express waivers required with this.
We're
The
just
signed
waiving
special
it
permit
in-
itself is to allow the
Okay.
maximum allowed height.
All right. So,
Motion to close the public hearing?
motion made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the signed special permit as requested.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the signed special permit,
All right, with our height allowance exception.
our additional height allowance exception.
All right, so we got the motion made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to agenda item I, 910 Andover Street. Site plan review, land disturbance permit. I have a motion to waive the public reading.
So moved.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimous. All right, before we get started, I just want to make a little clarification for everybody, because it would appear that everyone here is here for this. This project falls under what's referred to as the Dover Amendment. I'm not going to go into detail as to what that really means, but for our purposes, what it means is the board is incredibly restricted on what it can do, which is why we're not doing a special permit. We're only doing site plan review and the land disturbance permit, which is to say, if we're not doing the special permit, we're not doing a lot of the things we typically do with projects in terms of what we can ask for, what we can, require, and those kind of things. This is exempt, pretty much, from the things we normally do. So I just want everybody to be aware of that now, before we get started. That's not a decision being made by the board. That is a decision made by the state, and it basically removes much of our authority in dealing with this, just for everybody's understanding, okay? So with that, do we have somebody here for 910 Andover Street?
Take over.
Once everybody's settled, if you give your names for the record, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Christopher Vaccaro. I'm an attorney for Melmark, New England. I'm an attorney with Dalton and Feingold in Andover.
Good evening, folks. Randy Myron here on behalf of the applicant. I'm from Bowler Engineering.
The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Thank you. Before we start this off, Mr. Myron here, he's our engineer, and he's got a presentation that he's going to share. I just want to mention a little something about Melmark. What we do at Melmark primarily is we provide educational services for developmentally disabled individuals, many of whom have autism. I have with me this evening, in addition to Mr. Myron, we have Bill Ahern, who is a vice president of Melmark, and we also have our architects, John Cavaney and Christina McMahon from Cavaney Architects. So we can answer a lot of questions, and I know that we've all looked at the peer review, which was very well done, very thoughtfully done, and Alex Lauder herself gave this a very good review as far as detail and looking into what we're trying to do here. But the philosophy here is that Melmark has facilities in 3 different states, not only Massachusetts, but also Pennsylvania and North Carolina, and they are really a leader in providing educational services and residential services to autistic individuals and others with developmental disabilities. This particular project at 910 Andover Street is going to be a school. And there also will be residences there, which I think is going to make it very nice. It's going to be for adults with disabilities. Many of them will live on campus. I think there's probably going to be housing for, 16 to 20 people. And I believe the school itself will serve 45 people. The school building will also have connected with it some housing for employees. And I would just encourage everybody who's here this evening who has concerns about this if you care to just drive a mile up River Road into Andover, you'll see the Melmark School, which is actually quite a lovely
Just
facility.
got to talk into the mic because it's got to be picked up for the recording later. If anybody can't hear, we'll
I'm
adjust your
sorry.
mic.
I'm sorry, I'll just repeat that there's going to be, anybody here who'd like to learn more about Melmark, and we'll talk more about them later, but the school facility that they operate now, which I believe provides educational services for 126 individuals, most of whom I think are minors, are children. And what this project will do, will be able to expand, Melmark will be able to expand its services to an adult population as well, which is part of their mission. Now, just for the audience's sake, Melmark, I believe, is going to be having an open house shortly, maybe next week, in fact, at their facility. And I think that anybody who is interested in doing that has an opportunity to talk to Mr. Ahern back there, and he will give them the details on it. But with that being said about the mission, I really would like to hand this off now to Mr. Myron, who can explain the site plan application itself in better detail.
Thank you, folks. Is there anything I
The
need to do?
system is rebooting right now.
It is, okay,
Yes.
okay, awesome.
So you didn't stretch it long enough. You tried, but you weren't able to do it. And then you had turned away. You said their other site is where?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on River Road in Andover. It's probably about a mile, I would say, from the property we're talking about today.
Thank you. Did that help? No? All right, well, you wanted to get started, and then hopefully
I
that'll
will.
boot up?
Yeah, I will. Hopefully, we'll be able to see some graphics. Yeah, so the existing site, 910 Andover Street, it's a just under 5-acre parcel, I think 4.8 acres. There's 2 commercial buildings up front. Those buildings will remain as part of the project, and there's a I call it an undeveloped piece of the
I apologize, because it was something I was supposed to mention, so maybe I can give you just a little bit more stretch time. In association with this hearing, I filed a disclosure of appearance of conflict of interest. And the reason for that is because I live in the development that is next door to this. I don't own it, I just happen to live there. Having spoken to the attorney on duty today at the State Ethics Department, he suggested I file this because it is his impression, and with this filing, that I do not have a conflict of interest. So I have this form, this will be turned into the town. So I'm just making everybody aware of that, so, just so you know. So, still didn't help, so I did the best I could.
Excuse me, is there a way you can put it on my computer and I can reject it?
Yeah, you know what, and I brought it, so I had this issue last time with conservation. We have another computer, I don't know if it's my laptop. Can I email it?
Is it just the site plan?
No, it's like
Oh, presentation?
yeah,
It's a 10-slide deck.
Can you email it to me?
I can,
I'll pull it up.
yeah.
It's not the one I have, right?
No. So these are different. Great.
Yeah.
Come right back and stand there.
Step on that cord.
It's like the antenna when you were a kid on the TV, just stay right there.
It's not it.
Sorry, guys, I
This is
ruined it.
definitely the
No,
modern
no,
version of the rabbit ears.
If you could email it to me, I'll pull it up.
Wherever everybody was sitting when the.
When I
picture
used to
came
be the
up,
remote
nobody
control,
moved.
when I was a kid.
I suck, sorry about
So,
that.
what you need to roll.
Here we go.
My desktop.
Hang on, bear with me. Give me a little bit, I'll send it as it's,
What's that?
I'll send it in a little bit. Yeah.
Do you need a minute to
I
try
do,
and get
yeah.
this done?
Would that
Why
be
don't we do
okay?
this? Why don't we take like 2 minutes? 2-minute adjourn, and then we'll come back just so we can get this going. 'Cause I think with this many
Thank you.
people in the
Thank you.
audience, we can't be waving this
Thank
stuff
you.
around and hope everybody can see it. So it'll be better if we can get this thing up and running. All right, so with
Thank
that, we'll
Thank-
adjourn for 2 minutes and then come back.
Thank you,
Hopefully we
Mr.
can be
Chairman.
up and running. All right, I'm going to bring us back to order, and then I think we're up and running, so I will let you continue your presentation.
Great, thank you. So this graphic in front of us, this is just an existing conditions aerial, shows the entire property, and as I was mentioning before, it's a 4.8 acre parcel. There's 2 commercial buildings up front, and there's this undeveloped piece of property, or a portion of the property within the back that you can see. It's kind of I wouldn't call it wooded, it's kind of a mix of woods and kind of some scrub brush, low brush in that back area. And there's also 2 existing curb cuts. One of them's on Andover Street and another one on River Road that you can kind of see, and the sidewalk's kind of new in this area. And what we are proposing, as Chris had kind of mentioned,
A slide before that.
yeah. Hopefully it shows up. Yeah, what we're proposing, within that area that's undeveloped in the back, it's kind of this little campus, this small campus, and this is it here. So this is just a colored version of our site and landscape plan. There's multiple buildings being proposed within the back to develop, as part of this campus field that's being developed here. In total, there's, I think, 120 parking spaces on the entire parcel. So there's an increase, I think 75 parking spaces are currently out there today, so there's an increase of about 45 spaces. And we're simply just, we're maintaining both curb cuts that exist today, the one on Andover and the one on River Road. We're trying to create this, this campus-type feel with lots of pedestrian connections, sidewalks. There's some small parking areas here and there, ADA parking spaces. Within the center of the site, there's a patio area, an outdoor patio area, as well as like a pergola and a community greenhouse that are being proposed. And there's also to the northeast of the site, there is a wetland off the property on the other side of Merrimack Meadows Lane. I will say that we did appear before the Conservation Commission last week, and they did issue a negative determination as part of our request for determination of applicability, because the 100-foot buffer does extend just within the property. It does clip the northeast corner of the property. The other thing I also wanted to mention too is that there's a Kinder Morgan gas easement that runs through the property. It's a little tough to tell, but it kind of runs in a north-south direction, and there's 2 large gas mains within this area. We've had multiple discussions with Kinder Morgan. There's some design constraints that we need to kind of abide by since we're doing work within their area. They're asking for utilities to run perpendicular to the best of our ability to that easement. They don't want any trees placed within that area. We can't place buildings within their easement. So there are some constraints that we're up against associated with doing work within that easement. And then, of course, as part of the project, we are proposing a new stormwater management system to help comply with the DEP as well as the town standards. There's a series of deep sump catch basins, manholes, all being collecting the runoff from the site. And there's, I believe, 3 underground infiltration systems that are kind of proposed beneath the parking lot areas. So the decrease in stormwater runoff rates and volumes from what's out there today. In addition to that, there's new underground utilities, water, sewer, gas, and electric services that are being proposed. There is also new site lights to help illuminate the areas. The site lights 25-foot high. They're fully cut off, downward-facing fixtures, and they've been designed and placed to minimize spillover onto the adjacent properties. In addition to that, typical with any site plan. There's new erosion sediment controls surrounding the limits of the work. And of course, there's some fresh new landscaping. This plan in front of you does show some of the landscaping that's being proposed here. In total, I think there's 80 new trees, 390 new shrubs, and then there's also some ground covers that are being proposed. And that's kind of just a brief overview of the site plan itself, without getting into any details. If there's further questions on it, I'd be glad to answer them. As Attorney Chris Vaccaro had mentioned, we did receive some comments from staff, as well as a peer review comment, which we're in the process of looking through. And then the other item I also wanted to bring up was just traffic impacts associated with this development. We did submit a trip generation memo as part of our application package. This development itself, it's not a big traffic generator. You know, your typical weekday, the total trips that would be generated on your typical weekday is 380 trips. So 190 people entering, 190 people leaving. And that's over, you know, an entire day or a 10, 12-hour period, depending on how you look at it. So it's not a big traffic generator. I know you'll likely hear some concerns from some of the surrounding abutters, but that's kind of it. I'm gonna, I guess with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Christina McMahon, and she's got some cool architectural stuff to show you.
Hi, everybody. Chris already introduced us, but my name is Christina McMahon. I am representing the architectural team at CAC. John Caveney, our principal, is behind me. And so, yes, we've been working closely with Bowler and Melmark to develop this concept that we're presenting today. So this package that we submitted to you, it includes floor plans, but we are going to skip over that right now and kind of jump into this 3D, this rendered fly-through that we put together for you, because we felt like this would be a little bit easier to understand in terms of navigating the site and understanding the improvements. So if there's any questions about the floor plans, we're happy to jump back and answer that at the end of the presentation or in the future. But for now, we will move on to here. Okay. So our walkthrough starts at the entrance off of River Road, and the first structure that you're going to encounter here is the existing two-story building. So our goal here was really to preserve the building and upgrade it to sort of not only speak towards the overall development that we're planning, but also make it feel comfortable in its surrounding context. So sort of speaking towards more traditional architecture and really emphasizing the commercial storefront that we're putting on the ground floor, because right now there's several tenants in the building, all a bit disparate. So here we just really wanted to create a cohesive language as you're entering the site, because this is the first and really only part that you're going to see when you first approach. So here, as we move on towards the north end, this is the point that you're going to discover the entrance to the school. So this interior courtyard, this interior corner is sort of around the bend. And so this here is the entrance lobby that you're seeing. And beyond that will be the school, but we'll circle back to that at the end of the fly-through. But you'll see it's a single story, and it's really largely concealed behind the Enterprise Bank building. You really can't see it from the road. So as we progress onward, this will be the housing that Chris mentioned. So there are 4 houses, there are 5 bedrooms in each of them. And as you navigate through the primary aisle, there are sort of these pull-offs to create a more residential setting for each of the homes. And then here we're circling around the courtyard that's all of the homes are centralized around. There's the covered pergola gathering area, there's a greenhouse, and then this meandering path kind of guides you through the housing and back towards the school. So this view here is looking south. So really the primary facade of the school is looking north away from Andover Street. And sort of our goal here was to preserve the human scale because people do live here. It is a community. So the building is, single story, but then also is introducing, a pretty natural palette. We have wood siding that's carried both at the school and the houses. We have elements of fiber cement, sort of this green overlying color that makes the built structures fade into the landscape. And so, yeah, it's really, and then also, the north side really taking advantage of the natural lighting, but also creating that connection between the housing and the school, the views, and really establishing a sense of community. So this here is sort of the aerial we're panning back towards Andover Street right now. But yes, so the campus is really focused at the rear end of the site where we abut the residential neighborhoods on the north. And then, yes, closing here.
Are you able to freeze that any way you want?
Yep.
Can you go back to the end?
Yeah, absolutely. The aerial or which part?
The area that you would just back up just a
Looking
little
for his
bit.
house.
Just back up a little bit from, a
Sure.
little more. Stop.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
My guess is that most of the people in the audience are curious for that shot right there. Because that's the one that's giving you the road into Merrimack Meadows. And it's also giving you the backside of the residents on the northern side, I guess, the Lowell side,
Lowell,
if you were facing in from Andover Street. So why don't we leave that one up for now, just so people can get a look at it. I'm just gonna have a real quick question because you're rendering, obviously renderings are renderings, they're not absolutes. What I'm gonna guess is that, I saw the landscaping plan, so a lot of those trees on the left are actually in the landscaping plan, correct? Is that right? What about the ones down here on the right that go down sort of the Merrimack Meadows Lane Road? Those I didn't see as much on the plan. Are they just in this, or is it intended that those tree
So
lines would go down there?
So I believe those might be, I think those might be off the property.
Okay, so those are the ones not controlled by you then?
Correct.
Okay, okay. All right, I'm sorry, so, continue, I'm sorry.
That was the end of our presentation, so really would
So
like
if you
to-
don't need to, do you need to change this to something else now?
No.
So why don't we leave that one
Yeah.
up? Because I'm guessing it might be easy for pointing purposes for folks if they happen to come up. All right, so then I'll bring it to the board. We'll start with Mr. Chapman tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's really not, the peer review brought up a lot of issues. And so rather than rehash all of that and take up all of these folks' time, I think tonight's maybe a night more for hearing than talking on my behalf. I just wanted to ask a couple of things. It was noted in the town planner's memo that your drive aisles are at 12 feet, not 14 feet. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, I think we just felt that 12 feet was sufficient, but I think we're gonna take a look at that to see what we can do to address
Okay.
that.
I was just curious if the site just has a tightness to it that you couldn't accommodate that, because you are putting in 4 housing buildings.
Yep.
So I was just curious if that's where that was coming from or not, but obviously we love to see, waiver-less applications at the end. And there was a lot of information in the peer review about pedestrian safety, pedestrian walkways, bicycle racks, EV chargers, all of that. I will wait till you've had a chance to review and come back with some answers.
Thank you.
But we are big on bicycle racks, just so you know.
Okay.
190 employees, or 190 people coming in and out, would love to see some bikes and some EVs as part of that. Comments about snow storage, et cetera. All of those, the delivery issues, are all of those going to be part of a future presentation?
I think so, yes. I think that they would be.
What's your delivery plan now? What gets delivered to the site, at what hours, and in what type of vehicle?
I think that's something that we need to discuss internally as a team
Okay.
first.
We'd
And
like to
then-
know
and then we can certainly get back to the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your signage, and I think the fly-through right there shows it pretty good. The sign the monument sign we're looking at there is basically the same size as the Buick. My standard request is I would like to see compliant-sized signage and then be allowed to make the judgment as to whether or not the compliant sign is more in tune with the location where it's being put in, or as was the case earlier with the library and the senior center, is the signage at the size it's being requested at more appropriate for its location and use. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vitalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. I know we got a long way to go here. So you're saying 190 people going in and 190 coming out, right? On a
That's
regular
correct.
daily basis?
That's their average, that's the average weekday.
Yeah.
Yep, that's correct.
Doesn't seem like a minimal number to me. I mean, you have 16 to 20 students that are there, correct, during the day?
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It is. So there's 20 students who would live there and within the buildings themselves, plus there's roughly 30 students who would come, and be dropped off and picked up throughout the day.
That was my next
And then
question.
there's.
So that attests for some of the numbers coming in and out.
Correct. And there's
So
also
how many more students coming in during the day?
approximately 30.
30?
Yep.
Okay.
And there's also some employees,
Okay, so,
approximately 35 employees.
okay.
Yep.
All right, so
Yep.
that makes a little bit more sense. I didn't know why 190 was a number, because it seemed like an awful lot compared to having 16 to 20, so, okay. Still a good number of cars coming in and out on a daily basis to the site. I mean, I like the design, I like the campus look, I think it looks very, very nice. With that being said, you guys must have exterior security cameras and security on site?
Yes, we would do that. Can you just repeat, because that just comes from the audience, so.
Okay, yes, they would do that.
So you have security on site and cameras and so forth, just to monitor the facility, right? Okay.
Correct.
He's nodding back there, so you're agreeing, I guess, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So yes, correct? Okay, all right. I mean, it's important, it's a school with children that are artistic and so forth and so on, but you would think a security camera would be obviously needed just to monitor the facility, people coming in, people going out, so I hope you look at that at a good place as far as getting top-of-the-line security cameras and facilities for that purpose, you know? So, what else do they have here? So there's 5-bedroom units in each building, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you have security there and people on staff, overnight staff and all that, right?
It's staffed at all times
Okay,
that the
all right,
clients are there.
All right. I'll leave it at that. I'm all set, my name is Chairman, so, thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, sorry if I could interject for one moment, just to give some context to the trip generation. That is inclusive of the entire site, including the existing businesses?
That's correct.
Yeah, so just wanted to make the clarification that
That's
we're
correct.
talking about the existing other commercial building that is to remain intact with Tessie's and the bank and things like that, that those trip generation numbers include those existing businesses in addition to these new uses. Just a
That makes
point
a
of
little more
clarification
sense.
for everyone.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, kind of, I guess, pulling on that same thread, what's the delta if we exclude those existing businesses? So what would be the actual net increase in traffic here?
So the delta is the average of 380 trips per day. That's the delta of the increase in trips when compared to existing versus proposed. And that's your typical weekday, 190 entering, 190 leaving.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think kind of pulling on some of the same threads that Mr. Champa had. And we had some comments about sidewalks and pedestrian crossing here, and I actually do, I know your site plan is official and the render is not, but I do see a sidewalk up with the black and the red car up here along that spot of 5. I don't necessarily see that in the site plan. And also for that block of 13 spaces off to the right. Are there plans to add sidewalks for those, or is that?
Yeah, I know that, I think that was one of the peer review comments also. I think it makes sense to try to connect those two sidewalks. I do, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to kind of, again, try to have safe pedestrian access wherever we can.
Yep.
Outside of that, I think it's a noble cause here. I really do like the design you guys have put forward. It looks very nice, kind of this campus feeling, looks like a, good place. I like how you've kind of, hidden it from the street with the buildings there in the front. Overall, I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick questions. I noticed on your sign portion of your application there that the front sign, which is in pretty poor condition there, is that part of this project to replace that, or
Yes, we're planning on upgrading the existing pylon.
existing sign?
Yep.
Okay, that's great news. And so what about the parking lot? That's in pretty rough shape too, I happen to notice there. The existing parking lot, is there just going to be some kind of a cutoff? It looks like you get to the end of that parking lot and there's just a gravel pile leading up to the dumpster enclosure or something. And, what's the line of demarcation there?
So you meaning in terms of areas of new pavement, new striping?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so we aren't proposing to restripe or repave any of the existing parking lot beyond, what's being disturbed as part of this project. Does that answer your question?
It kind of, one of my other questions here is, though generally the water and drainage issues, I leave to the water and drainage experts, engineering. And I'm just curious if the existing parking lot and the new parking areas, drainage, calcs, are all kind of combined to control the stormwater runoff in that area.
So we did not look at the stormwater associated with the existing area up front. We just looked at, we analyzed the new parking area that's being created within the back.
Yeah, because I did notice that there are some elevation changes there as well.
Yep.
Okay, maybe that's something we can get a little clarification on, I guess kind of a generalized scope of work on the existing building,
Sure.
I'm sure you're going to be putting up a brand-new, beautiful complex that you would like the entranceway, basically. You have to drive right by that building, by the Enterprise Bank there, that you would want to kind of pretty that up a little bit in some way.
Yep.
Now, I would venture a guess, looking at those high-pressure gas lines that are in that neighborhood, that there would have to be some type of built-in enhanced supervision during the site work and excavation and so forth.
Yes.
When you get near those.
Certainly.
Because you're not too far from them, really, during there is going to be work, maybe even tree plantings that might be in that vicinity. So I think that I would feel a little more comfortable if there was a very clear, either a scope of work or a scheduling or all of the above alongside those gas lines there, and I think that would make everybody feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, and I know, as I mentioned, we've had lots of discussions with the gas company. We've been out and, they've told us exactly what you're telling us now. They need to be on site during all work. When we were out there doing some soil testing, investigating soils and groundwater conditions, they were out there the entire time. They were monitoring things. We need to submit plans to them for their review as part of this project to the gas company. We'll need to enter into some type of agreement with them also. So the gas company will be on site, I think, at all times during work.
Okay, so they will always have a gas line detail guy there or a supervision there?
Yes.
And he'll have an office in the site office there, or the office trailer. And so somebody will be on site to manage that
Correct.
aspect of the project.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's important to me, and I'm sure it's very important to the people that live in that area. We don't want to be messing with that. That's a big deal, in my opinion, my humble opinion. The only other questions I have, Mr. Ciampa touched on one of them, maybe some info if you're planning on installing some EV charging stations. But it does look like the tech engineering was commenting on maybe some increases in some of the ADA parking spaces, crosswalks, ramps, van accessible markings, that type of thing. It looks like you might be a little light on those there. So is that something you would mind taking a look at?
Certainly, yeah. I think we'll certainly take a look at that. And I think one of the comments from the peer reviewer was to kind of space out some of the ADA parking spaces, not lump them all into one location, space them out into different locations throughout the site. And I think we also need to relocate them so they're a little bit closer to the main entrance of the buildings also.
And
But
one of
yes,
their comments as well was what Mr. Lazat mentioned, was having some type of safe crosswalk from the school building area over into your kind of courtyard area there as well.
Yep.
That there's nothing marked that I saw on any plans here, so that might be something we'd like to see as well, just so that there's safe passage and movement. It seems like that on a nice day, there's a lot of movement around that area.
okay.
So maybe if we can get those things, and I think that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so one of these is just I don't know, it seemed odd to me, but this building right here, in the bottom, on its front facade, you have a sign pretty much towards the top of the building, correct?
Correct, yep.
Just out of curiosity, who is that sign for?
Melmark specifically.
No, I don't mean that. What I mean is, who's going to see that? It's internal to your site. Anybody who sees it is already at your site, meaning what is it? The only people seeing it are going to be from Merrimack Meadows at all, if at all. I can't tell because I can't see the sight line, but what I mean is, I'm not sure who it's advertising to. But by having it up high on the building, who sees it?
Yeah, it's mostly visibility from a distance is where we were coming from. People on the other end of the parking lot where the monument sign was down low. And I know there were comments about signage in general, and that's something that's very conceptual right now. And we're still working through, and we're definitely open to eliminating some signage. So this was exploring.
My thought of it is just, if you want to have signage on there to identify your entity, that's fine. Having it high up on the building, to me, just doesn't make sense in there. It could be lower down because it's not showing to anyone who isn't already driving through the lot. And if you're in the back and you live there, you know where you are. Like, you don't need the sign out in the front to be seen from the back of the site, because why are you in the back of the site if you don't already know where you are? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so you can have it on your building, but I don't know why it wouldn't be down lower, because it's not advertising to anyone. Your sign out on Andover, I understand, that's identification, here we are, this is where you want to come to, but up on the building doesn't make a lot of sense internally like that. That's just me, but, and then the only other thing is just, because you have a lot of good renderings, but the renderings I'd like to see a little bit more of is that last building at the back, the one that actually butts up to Merrimack Meadows back there, and the side, how it looks from kind of looking into the back of those buildings. Because we do this a lot of times with the Main Street buildings, is that when it's going to be seen from a certain vantage point, whether it's the side of a building on Main Street, we care about the sides, because coming up and down Main Street, you see the sides. You don't just see the front of a building. In this case, the back side of the building on the right here, and your back building, the back of the one in the back, and I don't know if it's the back or the side of this one on the right. Whatever that is matters, because that's what people on the other side are staring at. If they can't see it because there's tree lines, fine. But if it's not tree lined, then the back of the building needs to look as good as the front of the building, because it's what other people are staring at from the other direction. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because a lot of times those back sides or sides, they don't get quite the same detail as the front. But in this case, they aren't just a back. You know what I mean? They're kind of the front to others, is what I mean.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. To your point, that was a challenge that we were working through, because in essence, because they were all looking towards the courtyard, you were getting the back on all sides. So this house that's facing the school, they're all the same exact design. They're just mirrored. So we designed it as if it was front facing. And that was important to us, because it is visible from all sides.
Okay.
So.
Right, so for me, it's the one on the right and the one in the back.
Yep.
I'm curious what they look like
Yeah.
from somebody looking into the site. If what you're looking at is all tree line or bush, fine. But if you're seeing the building, I'd like to see what it is that people see. All right, does that make sense?
It does. And it will.
All right.
Yep. look.
But you keep circling that one in the middle, but you know that's not what I'm talking about, right?
No, I do.
All right, okay.
I'm just saying it has the same elevation.
Okay,
That's all. But yes, we'll include that.
Okay. Other than that, like the other members already mentioned, a lot of the stuff that came out in the peer review, that's stuff for you guys to hash out with them.
Yep.
I'm not going to go over and over with that. I do like the coloring, because, you know, once you put in all that landscaping and whatnot, hopefully it will sort of, you know, kind of disappear into what you've got there, which I think is ideal, because I think it's a nice setup. It really, you know, I mean, it certainly isn't onerous in any way. It's, you know, it's low. You know, you're not trying to build 2-3-story buildings back there or anything like that, that's tower overing anything. But obviously, it's going to be those folks right down the left side and, you know, around the perimeter are going to care what they see, you know, coming into the site. So that's, I think, worthwhile to have those renderings so people can have a comfort level on what it is they think they're looking at as well. I think, you know, I mean, in some cases, you get that road, it kind of winds away, but then it comes back, you know, it depends on which way you're going, how far you're getting away from where anybody's going to see it. But, you know, you see the abutters, you know where they are. So, all right. So with that, I'll open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns?
You can walk up to that podium, take your name for the record.
Good evening. Linda Paris. I live in Merrimack Meadows. And, I mean, not for nothing, I'm familiar with Melmark. My daughter's best friend works at Melmark up on River Road. She's happy with the employer. But I'm concerned about the construction. I'm concerned about water runoff. There's tons of water runoff from that location now. And I'm having trouble imagining what the water runoff is going to be when most of it is non-permeable surfaces. Because right now, it's all, you know, overgrown. Not for nothing, this looks beautiful, but I'm concerned about the amount of non-permeable surfaces and that road or driveway that basically circles the whole thing and bumps right up against Merrimack Meadows. So we're talking how much traffic is going to go down that road and around, because it does come very close to the buildings in Merrimack Meadows at that point. And what kind of buffer zone is there going to be? You're mentioning trees, and I mean, the side that faces Lowell seems to have a lot of trees, but I'm not seeing as many trees on the sides that face Merrimack Meadows, both the road leading into Merrimack Meadows and the road at the far north. I don't see a lot of trees there. Is it only going to be trees? Are you going to build a fence? You've mentioned that this is a school, but this is adults that are there. So adults can get up and walk around and go places. How many of them are going to decide that they're going to go walking in Merrimack Meadows, which is private property? So I'm a little concerned about foot traffic being added to the area, and not just the vehicle traffic, which 300 vehicles a day seems like a lot of traffic. And if we're talking about schools, we're really talking about, you know, an hour or two in the morning, an hour or two at night. So we're talking, you know, 150 to 200 cars concentrated at very specific times. So I hope there's really been a traffic study as far as when those cars are going to be entering and exiting. I just find this drawing, in a lot of ways, it's very pretty, but there's a lot of problems that still exist, and I'm worried about that. And, you know, my big problems are water, traffic, pedestrians, noise, and I think it's great to see the area developed. I just want to make sure that it's developed intelligently and that we're all good neighbors. And, you know, starting out on the Good Neighbor Road, you want to make sure that you don't impact us negatively. And when we look at the north corner of this development, the building I'm in is just beyond that north corner. So I'm one of the closest, there's two buildings there in Merrimack Meadows that are the closest buildings to this development, and I live in one of those, so I'm very concerned about how all of this is going to impact us. I understand Merrimack Meadows has, you know, a couple hundred residents in, private residents in there, but you know, we have one school bus that comes into Merrimack Meadows a day. You're arguably telling me that, you know, there could be a dozen school buses coming into this much smaller property. So I think, you know, I understand that we can't stop the development, and I don't even want to stop the development, but I want to make sure we do it intelligently.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jen O'Brien. I am in Merrimack Meadows as well. I guess my first question is, what was the appeal for this this lot? I'm aware of the Andover location, very open, very visible from the road. This is very set back. I mean, it's undoubtedly going to be a beautiful campus, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's hidden away, and to put all that effort and work into that, people aren't going to see it. I don't think the location is ideal. In regards to, again, as Linda mentioned, the traffic, anytime there was an accident on 495 or 93, that traffic can get backed up to Trailbrook Golf Course back there. So adding any sort of, sorry. I'm sorry, those are mine. Any sort of, you know, increase in traffic is going to, you know, factor in on that. And I'm not quite sure, I didn't really understand if there was going to be, the front parking lot was going to be done over spaces, because if you've traveled through that parking lot, people cut through that parking lot to avoid that light. There is no rhyme or reason to the spaces in that parking lot. To get in the entrance and exit off River Road, you cannot fit two cars at the same time. So these would be things that need to be addressed. But I do have some concerns. And again, I just don't think you're hiding away a beautiful campus and putting all this effort and work and money into it. And it doesn't seem like the most feasible location for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Richard DiStefano, Merrimack Meadows. That driveway there.
Can you just lift the mic up? You're a little bit taller than the last speaker. There you
Is
go.
that better?
Yep.
The driveway that it's shown there, that comes out into the parking lot by the Chinese restaurant? And then they're going to filter out the two ways there? Because here's the situation, they all mentioned about the traffic. If you're familiar with that, we just went from hell to heaven with the new traffic lights and all that. Now to add this confusion, I just concerned about the traffic. Also, I saw one of those things, there was a business on the building, it said donuts, not that was going to go there. Are there going to be businesses in this development?
That's the existing building. So you mentioned the Chinese restaurant?
That's
The
that
Chinese
building.
restaurant is where it says donuts right now.
Okay,
in
because
that
I
picture.
wish we had something in our hand that we could see, you know? And the back where that young lady was talking about, where the barrier is in the back and you got to see it, I think there should be some kind of nice fencing there, wooden fence to separate it so we don't have people coming in there. And it is private property, and we'd like to keep it that way. We don't have any soliciting in there, and it's wonderful. And the people walk there, but we want to keep it for the residents. So I guess my concern is the traffic, the aesthetics in the back, and also she raised a good issue. We have serious water problems down in there. The water comes flowing down there, and some of these units have been flooded, so if they need to make sure that that water is siphoned someplace else, not into our property. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Michael Farmer. I'm at 210 Merrimack Meadows. Quick question. We haven't mentioned trash. Pickup, where does it go? Who's picking it up? How often is it getting picked up? We don't have one particular rodent problems, but we are in a wildlife area, and we're looking not to attract. We've already got the ones with fur coats. We prefer the ones without them. You can answer that.
Yes, absolutely. So there's dumpsters proposed between the commercial buildings in this corner of the site.
And how often are they going to be addressed? Weekly?
I don't believe we have an answer to that yet.
Okay, and also, because you are close to not only our neighbors in Lowell, but the ones for Merrimack Meadows, 5 a.m. pickups, with dumpsters is not a pleasant experience for anybody.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any other questions, comments, or concerns? Going once, twice? All right, you snuck it in.
I live at 28 Merrimack Meadows.
Name?
Donna Mahan, at 28 Merrimack, so I'm in the very beginning. And I'm just curious, in all due honesty, how, we are private. I know who walks in and out of my neighborhood. Are you gonna be able to prevent that from happening? I mean, I know the school buses that come in and out, I know my residents, I know my neighbors. I would be concerned to have someone that I don't know, walking through. I can't tell you a couple of times I've had a lockdown because the bank's been robbed or the mobile station's been robbed. It's safety. And I'm not the youngest one in the neighborhood, nor am I the oldest, but there's a lot of kids that run through there that we don't need strangers going through it. And how are you going to prevent that from happening? Do you have a lockdown campus?
We can get back to the board on that.
Get back to us, okay?
We will.
Just for clarification, so I think there are two different questions. There was one, have you considered fences? That was one. And the other one is, I think she said, if the campus can be locked down, I think it's, can it be, not is it all the time, or is that the question? Ma'am? I just trying to clarify one of your questions. Were you asking let me just, because I'm the only one you're going to be here, you can just tell me if I'm right or wrong. Were you asking, is it a lockdown campus all the time? Or are you saying, is it able to be locked down for a reason?
You won't be locked down all the time, because we're talking adult people, I'm not being
Okay,
prejudiced.
I got it, okay. So that was the question. I just want to make sure we were understood the question that was being asked. Okay.
Hi, Jane Wood, Merrimack Meadows.
If you just step up to the microphone and say it one more time.
Jane Wood, Merrimack Meadows.
Okay.
Two questions. One is about expansion of the school. I assume there is going to be no expansion of the school. And is this considered a school zone, so the people that are flying down 133 have to go 20 miles an hour?
I couldn't tell you for the second one, and I'm guessing the answer is no, that it's not like a school the way a public school would be referred to. It's just, that's what you're referring to it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then your other question, I'm sorry, what was it?
Expansion.
Oh, expansion. Whether or not, I guess the question would be, whether or not the idea would be, you currently would referencing, was it 20 or 25 living on? How many were living on campus?
You had 16 to 20 and 30 coming in daily.
Correct. Is the idea that that's the cap, or is the idea that you may have more students of that at some point?
There have been no discussions about a future expansion at this point.
Okay. So, but I guess the question is, at the size it is now, with no changes, could it be increased? I guess would be the question.
That would be difficult.
You can if you come up. You got to come up to the podium, though.
So it'll be
No, wait till you get to the microphone, if you wouldn't mind.
Your name, too?
just, Bill Hearn from Millmark, it'll be just the 20 in the house, and it will not expand, so it's 5 in each house. And then in the day program, it's just a 30 additional. So the 20 walking from the home, plus 30 additional coming in from the outside. They're not going to be coming in school buses, they're going to be coming in a car. So I don't know where these traffic numbers are coming from, but we're only looking at about 30 students coming in from outside of the campus, so at most 30 cars, plus those 40 staff in the day. And then, so the rest would be staggered. So those people would leave, and then you would have more staff coming in for the residences, say about 20 staff for the residences. So I don't know where the traffic numbers are coming from, but that's what you're looking at, and it's going to be staggered at a couple of different points throughout the day, so the traffic impact should be minimal. And then, you want to ask a question?
I'm sorry, no, go ahead, finish up.
And then in regards to the clients that we serve and where they can and can't go, I mean, they're free people, and they can walk the same place as anyone else can, and we understand private property and respect private property. They'll have a staff member with them at all times, but we don't lock them up and lock them in their homes. So, yeah, they'll be free to walk around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a comment on the engineering page as to what if any use is going to be on the second floor of the B buildings.
Second floor, we're going to propose apartments for some of our staff, subsidized housing for some of our staff.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that traffic number, too. When you said that it's the increase from what exists now, those numbers don't make any sense, because you're talking about if there's only 30 students coming in on a daily basis, the most cars 30 people can come in on is 30 cars, and they can only leave in 30 cars. So even if the staff, so even if there's 40 and then 60 if you do the second shift, that's 60 plus 30, I'm at 90, not 190.
Right.
So I'm wondering if maybe you're not correct, that that's also counting the businesses that are existing traffic as well, all rolled into one number in and out of the site on a daily basis, because I can't figure out where you're getting 190 trips in and out in a day when you only have 30 students coming in. So I'm not, I mean, even if you stagger and counting, a delivery truck and a pickup for trash, and I mean, I don't see how you get that other 100.
The numbers were based on ITE trip generation numbers, and again, it's comparing what's out there today versus what's being proposed as part of this development.
So you're not, this is, okay, so there's the disconnect. So that's what I guess you would need, or you should be trying to tell us too, is that that's the number generated by the stats. The reality is what this gentleman just said, which is, this is how much staff there is, this is how many students there are. The number is more this than that. Because we have to use those numbers when we're doing, but we did the same thing when we just did some of the marijuana discussions on the zoning for those, is that there's the number that shows up in the book, and then there's the number of what's reality on a day.
Yep.
The reality of your day sounds like, at most, if every student comes in a separate vehicle, 30 in for them. Staff, if they all show up in separate vehicles, 40 more. They're gonna come out at some point during the day, but another 20 is like your night shift or whatever it is. So you're basically talking about maybe 90 at most, thereabouts, not 190. Do you understand? Right. Well,
in
no,
reality.
90 in, 90 out. So you're at 180 in and out, whereas before you're at 190 in and 190 out. That's double. You know what I mean? You're doubling the number. What's that?
Are they parking them all? If he's saying they're not coming in on buses, they're coming in private vehicles, that means those private vehicles have to park.
Well, I don't want to make assumptions or presumptions, but I'm just guessing that the folks who are coming to be there at the day school didn't drive themselves. They were dropped off, and that car then left.
Couple of trips. There's a car coming in.
Right, which they have the ins and outs, But what I'm saying is that those folk, you're not trying to park all those cars there all day long, is my point. So that's one of the reasons why the number of spaces wouldn't be necessary for 190 cars or something, it's not, doesn't work that way. Okay.
Good. Oh, and one more thing. We are, as I think it was mentioned earlier, we're hosting an open house at our school, April 3rd at 6 o'clock. So more questions that aren't addressed here tonight, we can certainly answer them and tell you more about our program and our clients. Thank you.
Sir?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I thought I read somewhere, and there was a lot of literature, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe they added the trip generation as the residences, as if people living there were leaving to go somewhere else.
Because of the IT, yeah.
Because the trip generation just says, what's the building? The building's a house. Oh, well, how many people live in the house? Those people
That's
are
why I
gonna
asked
leave
for
and come back.
the more real number.
Right, so I think that's part of it.
Sir?
Hi, good evening. My name is Val, resident of Merrimack Meadows.
I need your last name if you wouldn't mind.
Deanna.
Thank you.
This is a school, so is there a curriculum? Is there summer vacations? You talk about staff, but not about teachers. Is this more of an assistant living facility or an actual school where there's teachers coming in, people get diplomas, they graduate, and new people come in?
All right. So I think maybe we're getting a little confused on the terminology. I don't know whether it would make more sense for somebody, you're referring to it as an educational facility rather than a school maybe, and that might clear up the confusion. I mean, are you asking whether or not they're going to have a commencement ceremony? I mean, we understand that we're talking about an
Is there gonna be a
educational
turnover?
facility, not a school as determined by the state of Massachusetts like Tewksbury High School.
So this is going to be a long-term, people might be in there for 10 years, the same people?
Yeah, again, I see a nod from the person back. They could be there beyond the normal 12 years, I guess, of a school system.
Okay.
Again, it's not a school like Tewksbury High School. So I think maybe we can clear that
It's a
up by
long-term
referring
care
to as an
facility.
educational facility, and that might clear up any confusion on what it is. So just for clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, so Roy Paris, 10 Merrimack Meadows, Tewksbury, Mass. I was just thinking, so are these people that are going to be living there going to be allowed to walk around on their own?
I think we've had the question answered a minute ago, that there's a staff with each person.
Okay, 'cause-
But they are obviously free to walk around, but they have staff that's walking around with them. But
Okay,
if that was
because
the answer to your question.
we got to remember that the Merrimack River's right there too. That if somebody could go roaming on their own, could go right down to the river and fall in, or something on that nature. Do you know what I'm saying? I didn't know if anybody thought of that. I'm just bringing it up, that the river is there, and if somebody should just go for a walk, there's
As I think,
potential.
I believe the
There's
director
potential that,
did mention that they have a
obviously.
staff member with each.
right, okay,
resident.
that's, okay. Because even what, like the traffic on Andover Street, 133, just walking around there is dangerous, you know what I mean? You get cars flying through there, even with the light there, they run the red. It's just a thought.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Say my name again? Jen O'Brien from Merrimack Meadows. I just want to follow up for clarification. So with the traffic, we're talking entrance and exit. So if you're saying 30 individuals getting dropped off, that's 30 in, 30 out. So that's 60. So if you do that
No, I
morning.
understand, but what I'm saying is the trip generation that they're using from the book versus the reality of what times and when those vehicles are going in and out was my point, that 190 didn't make sense.
But in one trip or total?
Well, I'm saying, they're talking about in 190, out 190 in the day.
Okay.
But when you work that out, even if they are going back and forth, you still don't have enough trips to get to 190, was my point.
Okay. I just
Even
wanted
if you're
clarification.
going back and forth, if they're dropping off.
Okay.
It just doesn't, the numbers don't work out that way. You don't have enough students and staff coming in total.
What about deliveries?
What about
I know, again, I'm not going to get into each and every little delivery. I'm saying, when you're doing the trip generation, the numbers didn't work. Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? All right, we're breaking our own rule with multiple trips to the podium. This will be the last double
If I
try.
go down like this,
I still recognize you, sir.
I just want to clarify what the gentleman said about the private property. Did he say that it was okay for him to have people come in there? Or did I
I don't
misinterpret
think
that?
he was authorizing private property crossing over
Okay.
either way.
Yeah.
Anyone from Merrimack Meadows walking onto their property, or anyone from their property walking onto Merrimack Meadows.
Because we have issues with the speeding in there as it is. We have speed bumps in there, and I don't want to see any of these kids get hurt. It's tough enforcing the problems we have already without adding to that problem.
I'll reiterate again, if I understood it correctly
Yeah.
from the director, that the students will have someone from staff with them. So unless both the student and the staff member start wandering around
Yeah.
aimlessly, I don't think that's going to be a
Okay,
problem.
but as long as they understand that it is private property, they shouldn't be in there. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead. This is it. Last time.
Just a short one. Can I ask?
At the podium. Thank you.
It's Kathy Morricone, and I'm at Merrimack Meadows. Can you go back to the first slide where the beginning, where the entrance is? That's my concern, is because right now, right there, when people are going into that parking lot, it's not big enough for two cars. And I find when I'm coming out of Merrimack Meadows and going in there, when someone is coming out, they're smack in the middle, and I have to back up traffic just to get in there. So I don't know who takes care of that, but it should be widened up a little bit, just to help with that traffic.
Yeah, I do think that, I don't disagree, I understand what you're describing. I do think it's funny, because that driveway used to be about a mile long. It had
Yes.
no curbing of
Yes,
any
and when
kind.
they fixed it, they made it so small. And when like I said, when I come around the corner to go to the, because I use that bank,
I would suggest that, going along with what the
that's my
residents
concern.
mentioning, is that the configuration of the existing parking lot now with this addition, you might want to look at how that lays out, because I know the spaces are put in there to get to the number or whatever, but the flow of the way that parking lot works, and you can't even see the lines anyways, that's beside the point. But the way you may want to sort of set the spaces up, you may want to look at that as an overall traffic issue and on-site movement, because I think if you coordinate with what you're doing in the back, with how you line the front, because I think it's going to need to be relined. You can't have it the way it is right now. It can be used as a cut-through, and people are cutting directly over parking spaces, because one, you can't see the lines. But the ones that would be closest to this entrance-exit might be ones you might want to relocate a few spaces to make that space a little more, widen it even internally to make it easier for cars to come in and out and not block up that entrance. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, if it gets to the point, and I don't know, we can discuss too whether or not you want to put in a rumble strip in the middle that forces people to stay on one side or the other when they're coming in and out. It won't prevent anybody from doing anything in particular, other than, you see the rumble strip, you really shouldn't be driving over it. You're not going to enjoy that as you do it, so it would discourage it. But that may solve some of that problem, so you may want to just, especially if you're going to be trying to repave some of that anyways, it might make sense, so.
The best thing they could do is put in a cement in between the two-car park, and there's like that little cement thing. If they put cement things in the parking lot, nobody will have a problem, because they won't cut through anymore. Because if anybody's gonna get killed from that school, it's gonna be in that parking lot.
Okay, all right. So anyone else with any, yes?
My only note to the folks with the questions in the audience, which are appreciated, but if they are going to be prolonged, as the chairman mentioned, they do have to be at the podium so that all of the public record is picked up. No, that's okay. I'll just repeat what folks were asking is about adding cement concrete islands in the parking lot. That also presents an issue for navigability for life safety apparatuses. So that would be something that would have to be looked at with the length, size, and navigation of a Tewksbury ladder truck. So that's just another consideration and why we don't usually jump right to putting those physical concrete barriers, because yes, it'll keep cars separate, but it could slow down response times for life safety response.
Plus, at the same time, it's not really on the property owner to try to discourage the completely and totally illegal crisscrossing across their parking lot. That's not really within their control when people cut across through the parking lot that aren't supposed to avoid the light. It would be no different at the gas station. You shouldn't be doing it at the gas station to avoid waiting to take the right off of 133. People do it, it doesn't, there's not much, you're not gonna put speed bumps through the gas station to stop people from cutting through it. It's just, logistically, it's not really the landowner's fault that people are illegally crossing their parking lot as a throughway. So, all right. No, no, you can't yell from the side of the room. I've said that already, because you have to pick it up. Ma'am, you can go ahead, because you haven't you haven't gone yet, so you get to go.
Paula Powers, I live at Merrimack Meadows.
You gotta pull the mic over to you, there you go.
Paula Powers, I live at Merrimack Meadows. Had a question. The 5 acres, does that include the front buildings, or is that just where you're building this new area?
The existing property, including the buildings up front, is 4.8 acres.
Okay. That just seems like a small area to build this in, to me. The business is staying in those buildings in the front, like upstairs and everything. Are you building something different in the bottom of that building, or is that still going to be the Chinese restaurant, or?
That, as I understand, it's a rendering. It's just meant for informational purposes.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you have a donut shop tenant lined up, correct? For that corner?
Potentially,
Yeah?
yeah.
Okay. So maybe it will be a donut shop instead of a Chinese food restaurant?
Yeah, so just
But the
that-
renderings, they're not exact, so don't bank on everything in a rendering.
But I had seen something about a coffee shop or something, and I didn't realize it was going to be out here. Is that what that is? Is that?
Yep, so just the Andover Street ground floor facing tenant would remain a commercial tenant. The remainder of the ground floor would be dedicated to the school, and the second floor would be for employee subsidized housing.
Oh, so you're taking over that whole building then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. The students that would be there, I work at a school district. We have students with disabilities and all that. Are any of these students, I know they're adults, in any way, like, I know people with mental illness can be dangerous, or, you know what I mean? Are there any students that are like that would be there?
Yeah. Bill, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, try, if you don't mind. These are developmentally disabled. This is a developmentally disabled population. Many of these people have had brain injuries, they have autism. We're not using this as a halfway house for the criminally insane. I mean, this is a project which is really designed to address the needs of a vulnerable population who needs housing, and in particular needs education, needs occupational therapy. And that coffee shop, I believe that is someday hope will actually be a place where some of these people can work and pick up some developmental and some occupational skills to help them navigate this world that we live in. So, I really want to stress that the purpose of this, just like the purpose of the school on River Road in Andover, is to help a population which really needs the support of this community. Thank you.
All right, so I'm also going to kind of put an end to this part of it, too. Any more questions along these lines are best dealt with at the open house or with the petitioner, because as a site plan issue, those comments and those discussions really aren't within our purview. So, all right, it's a lot of anticipation now. This better be good.
This is good,
All right.
okay? Donna Mahan from 28 Merrimack Meadows. When we were doing all the construction with the set of lights and everything, we had a rodent problem. Are you going to be able to?
A what?
rodent. So you're
I think
disturb-
rodents were brought up once already, right?
I don't know, but disturbing the wildlife. I mean, I had them on my deck, around my house. Are you gonna help not have that happen again? It's upsetting.
I can't.
Can you,
I don't even
when
know
you,
who the
when you
right-
do this construction, is there a way to,
I have no answer for that question.
But you can understand my
I don't feel like that
concern.
might be one for us anyways. I feel like, I don't know if that's Board of Health.
I don't know, but it's a concern.
I'm going to put it off on the building inspector's office.
Please, it is a concern.
Because I really don't have an answer for that. I don't think it's ever come up in any of the construction we've ever discussed, so I don't know.
Nope, I think that's going to be something for the applicant to address and manage during the construction process. There would be no enforcement from our town offices unless they were breaking, in fact, breaking a town bylaw that was enabling some sort of infestation. But if they're within all of our bylaws and regulations, then that would just be down to an individual project management issue.
Hi, just a quick statement. I'm Donna Arvidsson. I live at 21 Carlton Road in Tewksbury. I just wanted to speak to the fact that providers like Melmark serve folks with developmental disabilities. And if you have a family member or a friend with a developmental disability, you know that they're often very caring and loving individuals who need some help. And the staff at Melmark are very caring individuals themselves who are just looking to help adults gain some independence and vocational training. And they'd be welcome members in the community, I believe. And I'm glad this is being proposed and considered. And I'm thankful they want to be a part of our community. And I do think they have their clients' safety as a top priority. And I can speak to the fact that they would have one-to-one staff escorting them and engaging with them on the property, not wanting to cross into private property. And also, I do think the river and all of that would be a top concern for Melmark to ensure their safety on the property for their clients. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, that take care of everybody? Going once, twice, sold. All right, so with that, bring it back to the board. Anyone else on the board with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Two quick
Mr. Duffy.
notes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Duffy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of quick comments. I ditto what the resident just said there. I've had the fortune of working with a couple of programs over the years. One of them was eMark, working with adults with disability. I think it's morphed into something else now, but I've assisted my daughter, who is a softball coach in Special Olympics. I think it's a great idea and a great program and a great asset to the community, to provide quality services for kind of an underserved group of people out there. In my experience, is I wouldn't trade it for the world. Okay, it was a great experience working with those people. So I'm just going to say that, full disclosure. A couple of just quick questions. One of the residents was talking about drainage. I did notice on the plans, and again, I'm not the water expert here, but I did notice 3 large infiltration tanks. So I think that whatever erosion may have been happening up to this point, looks like they may have taken control of that with the new infiltration tanks that are going to be constructed during the new construction. So I feel pretty comfortable about that. I will mention that rodent control is in the building code, so the building inspector will be, maybe commenting on that at some point down the road if there is an issue there. I think the coffee shop is a fantastic idea for some of those workers. And hopefully they can work in other businesses in the area as well, because my experience with some of those folks is that they've been great workers. And then one more thing, I just had a quick question on one of the comments somewhere I read along the line was something about elevation changes, and I did see a detail for some riprap, but I didn't see it on any of your elevations or renderings here, but I did see some sort of a retaining wall along the tree line on the left side. Is there going to be a retaining wall built alongside there?
There is a small, I think there's a couple small retaining walls, like 3-4 feet high in a couple areas. I mean, the property, there's somewhat of a decent grade difference from front to back, so that's the reason for some of those retaining walls in a couple areas.
Okay, okay. And I'm sure we'll see a little bit more detail on that going forward, on the site work and the site plans and so forth. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Champa?
Just a couple notes. It appears that all of your interior sidewalks are going to be cement concrete. We've gotten in the habit of asking if you're going to do bituminous or cement concrete, but you clarify which kind it is so that there's no confusion when inspectional services or DPW or anybody else comes out to review the work being done. I heard you mention in the beginning of your presentation, 25-foot site poles. I'd like to see a section, and I'd like you to try to be as accurate as possible of the residents of Lowell going across to Merrimack Meadows Lane, and also your buildings, the height of those site poles. It was commented in the peer review that it looked like there was going to be some spillover, but basically, you know, the residents in these areas, they've been there a long time. The last thing they want to see is gigantic stadium lights or parking lot lights overlooking their properties, so.
Is the concern then with the height of those lights, or and there was a little bit of spillover of light, and I think we can certainly add some house side shields onto those fixtures to help prevent that. Is the concern with?
A little bit of both, depending on how visible they would be. If they're on the interior of, if they were near the courtyard,
Yep.
they wouldn't really be visible over the trees, but if they're on the perimeter where you have that driveway going around, you know, that might be a little more intrusive. So I'd like to just see a section showing some typical, well, not typical conditions, but actual design conditions. So more of a sample than a typical.
Okay.
And then the last thing, and this brings me back from something else that we experienced, your drive lane is actually going, the exit lane goes behind the residence of Burnham Road there. Will there be speed control, speed bumps, things like that, something to make sure that people drive slow and, you know, and safely along the back? Nobody wants to hear cars whizzing through their backyard at 40 miles an hour. Because, I mean, it's a pretty clear stretch once you get past that last house to zip right back to the upcoming donut shop there, so.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? All right. Okay, so, next week's. All right, so what is the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we continue the hearing.
All right, we have
Question, sir, is 2 weeks enough, or you need more time?
We're going to need some more time to respond to all those comments, so.
Want to do the one after then?
Sure.
Okay. So what, I don't have that one.
April 29th at 7:05.
April
29th.
29th at 7:05.
Correct.
All right, so we have a motion to continue till then.
So moved.
All right, motion seconded.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll see you next time, 2 times from now.
April 29th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to agenda item J. The applicant has requested to be continued to our next meeting, which we have them penciled in for 7:20. Do I have a motion to continue?
So moved.
A motion made second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That brings us to agenda item K. The applicant has also requested to be continued at our next meeting. We have them penciled in for 7:15. Do I have a motion?
No move.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, that brings us to correspondence. There's no specific correspondence other than the one that was in that, for that last hearing that was in there. Other business not known at the time of the posting of the agenda. Is there any other business anyone wishes to discuss?
Nothing.
All right.
All set.
That brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. We'll see you next time. Thank you.